So thank you, Nancy. You're the executive director of Voters Not Politicians, and you're behind Proposal 2 in Michigan in the 2018 midterm elections, which essentially ended the process of gerrymandering in the state and changed the way the voting districts are drawn. But maybe first I'll tell you a little bit about us and about our organization. And I'm actually a Michigander myself,
Oh,
so
great.
it's very exciting for me to cover this story once again. I work now, though, with an organization called Democracy International, and we're an NGO. We're based in Cologne, Germany, and we work really in the field of direct democracy, so citizens initiatives, ballot proposals, and really a bottom-up approach to political participation. And we're doing right now a series where we hear stories about democracy in times of the corona crisis and how initiatives and groups and movements are responding to the crisis, of course, with regards to democracy issues and citizens' participation. And we covered already the Voters Not Politicians campaign ahead of the last midterm elections. But this time we really want to hear about Vote Safe, about your campaign to push for postal voting in Michigan amid this crisis. And first of all, because maybe some of us have followed your story already, maybe you can give us a short recap of the current status of gerrymandering in Michigan and the transition to the Vote Safe campaign, and why this issue of ensuring postal voting is really important now.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, you're right. So we were the grassroots organization that we formed in 2017, specifically because voters across Michigan wanted to take on the issue of partisan gerrymandering. Michigan is one of the worst gerrymandered states in the country, and our voters were seeing, for decades of elections that the people that were being voted into office, didn't reflect the views and the priorities of the voters on the ground. And so we were able to organize over 6,000 regular Michiganders who came together to get ballot petition signatures and to put this initiative to amend our Constitution on the ballot. And it formed a independent citizens redistricting commission that draws our district lines rather than the politicians doing that. And so that passed by 61% of the vote in 2018. And so what we've been doing since is supporting the implementation effort. First we're actually in federal court because the Michigan Republican Party, the party that was in charge of all of the gerrymandering in Michigan, they sued to try to undo the amendment. So we've been fighting since 2018, and we're continuing to fight. We've won at two different stages now in the federal courts at the district court level, and then we won a unanimous decision in the circuit court. And then we just heard just recently that they're petitioning to get that case reheard. So they're continuing to fight, but so are we, and the law is on our side. Meanwhile, the state went ahead and solicited applications for people who wanted to serve on the commission. So all of our volunteers who were involved in getting the ballot initiative passed, then really kind of took to the streets, and we were doing a lot of in-person events to educate people on what the commission does, what's the process now that the proposal passed, and to encourage as many people as possible to apply to serve on the commission, because like its name says, it's really about citizens, that anybody can apply and serve. And so we wanted to get the message out that this is really, originated from the people. It's supposed to have real Michiganders on the commission. And I'm proud to say that we, last count, we had over 6,000 people apply to serve on the commission from all throughout the state, and we made it a priority of ours to really recruit as many people from underserved communities as possible, young folks, and we were really successful in doing that. So the application process closes in just a week or so on June 1st. Can't believe it's June already. Yeah, so that really was the first step, and I think having so many people engaged and involved really sets us up for success. So we are really thrilled with how the application process went. And then next will be, the sorting process. We'll get the commission of 13 Michiganders. And then starting in early 2021, we'll have a public hearing process where, people from the community can give testimony to the commission about, where the boundaries of their communities are. And the commission's job is to take all of the information about, really where people are, who share interests live, and to try to draw election districts to keep people together so that they can get represented in our state government. So all of that will be super exciting to see all the way to the end. And then we'll have a fresh set of district maps at the end of 2021. And it will look entirely different from what we have now, because we have really, really
no lizard anymore, right?
Yeah, insane looking districts. And so we're really excited by that. And then that, of course, leads to, a state house and a state senate that looks differently, right? Where the representatives are actually held accountable by the voters, because the voters can vote them out. So so while we're doing that, we also saw like everyone, right? Like COVID, was not on anyone's radar, and now it really is dominating our lives. So when we saw the photos coming out of Wisconsin from their March election, or April election, we really it just hit home what we were facing here in Michigan. We have election coming up in August and November, and Michigan is one of the hardest hit states by COVID. So I think we have like the third highest death rate right now in the country, and especially in areas like Detroit. And we made it a mission of ours to try to strengthen our democracy in a specific way of trying to push our legislature and trying to push our governor and other lawmakers to pass the rules we need, or pass the laws we need to make vote by mail more easily accessible to all of our voters. So because of another initiative in 2018, all Michiganders now have the right to vote by mail. It's written in our Constitution now. And what we want to see is a legislature that passes laws, because we need a set of new laws to allow the Secretary of State to mail ballots to every Michigan voter. So right now they haven't done that yet. And so we are using our same structure of, getting hundreds of people to call in to their state legislator's office. We gave questionnaires to our lawmakers to see, do you support vote by mail? And, if so, can you speak publicly about it? We just we hosted a webinar yesterday where we had more than 2,500 people tune in to hear the Secretary of State and other national experts talk about what is vote by mail? How do you do it in Michigan? Why, do you want more people to vote that way this year? Is it safe and secure? Lots of questions that people have about that process. And so our mission really is to push the envelope and try to get our lawmakers to really put a ballot in every person's mailbox this year, but then also at the same time to educate people on, how do you vote by mail? Because they have the right regardless, right? So they can apply to get a ballot if they don't get one automatically. And but what does that mean? Can you vote from home? Then what do you do with it? You can mail it in or put it in a Dropbox. And also to send a really important and positive message, I think, of encouraging people to vote, right? Because now everyone's so sheltered in place, and it's so uncertain out there. We really want to push the positive message out that, hey, this is a really important election year, and let's all let's vote, because we have the right to, but we can do so safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And it's also great that you're doing so much public awareness about this, right? Also, because the no reason absentee ballot request is fairly new in Michigan, right? I mean, It was a ballot proposal alongside the Voters Not Politician ballot proposal in 2018. So it's really great that somehow you have your foot in both doors on both sides of this. That was a successful ballot proposal from 2018. Exactly that you propose concretely in your plan, and how would it look like if it were to be adopted? You mentioned that every voter would receive a ballot in the mail,
Right.
but would some voting locations still remain open then, just selected ones, or could they bring the ballot then to their local clerk's office, or how do you exactly see that?
Yeah, so what we were trying to stress is that vote by mail means as many people as possible will vote by mail. And the reason you want that is because then it reduces the crowding and the lines that you have at your clerk's offices or polling locations on election day. And that was the problem that we saw in Wisconsin, where people were still waiting in line for 3 hours, and they were waiting in really tight lines, and poll workers were at risk, right? People in those lines were at risk. So we want to see, again, as many people vote by mail as possible. If they get a ballot in their mailbox, then we want to make sure that they have different options of returning that ballot. So they're, the postal service, like there's some delays right now, or some people don't trust the postal service. We want to make known to them that they would have the option to return the ballot by Dropbox, secure Dropbox, or in person if they wanted to at the clerk's office. But because, they don't have to do that on election day, it's not, 10,000 people trying to do that, all in one day. You can spread it out, right? All the way up through election day. So that really helps keep people safe. And then there's also other people that, for many reasons, different reasons, are going to still vote in person. And so those options have to still exist. And in fact, another part of our program is we have all of these local volunteer groups that are lobbying their local clerks to keep their clerk's offices open for longer periods of time before election day. So we want them open on the nights and weekends leading up to election day, because a lot of people work and they have childcare responsibilities, and you want to make it as convenient as possible. So we know that there has to be in-person options, and we want to actually expand those and make, basically, in general, we want a whole system that doesn't disenfranchise any voter, right? It doesn't cut off options from anybody, it just expands them. And but at the same time, we're hoping to make it as easy as possible for voters, as many as possible, to vote by mail, just to take the stress and kind of take the crowding away from our process.
Yeah, it really sounds like, you want to just lower the hurdles for being able to
That's right.
vote by mail, which shouldn't be too difficult in this day and age anyway.
Right.
Really, in today's world, we could even vote online. We could already have digitally
Yeah.
run democracy. Some countries like Estonia, they're voting completely online, where even to the point where you could even take back your vote until election day. You can even change your vote, constantly log back in with like your voter ID.
Oh, that's
so
great.
as political developments change over the months, nowhere campaigns last as long as in the U.S., but in a short amount of time where the campaign is, if the person decides to change their mind, they can do that until election day, and they can.
Oh, that would be great.
So I think in the United States, there's absolutely no reason why this should not be possible. But yeah, as we're a direct democracy organization, we work really heavily on citizens initiatives, and we follow ballot proposals. So it'd be really interesting to know the advocacy work that you're doing on this topic. You said you've been already in touch with legislators and really seeing whether they would speak out about this issue. But if this does not get adopted by the election in November, or the primaries even in August, are there any plans to begin a signature collection to get this question on the ballot and propose this again to the citizens of Michigan, kind of like what you did with Voters Not Politicians?
Yeah, we're seeing this as another campaign, right? And that we're waging now in order to get results in 2020. But the larger issue is that we really need a pro-voter legislature in our state. And so there's going to be lots of ways that we're fighting to get that. So one was passing gerrymandering reform. So you actually, your voters vote for a certain person and their votes, aren't wasted, right? For political reasons. And then another piece of that is voter awareness. So our questionnaires that we're passing out right now, we've distributed them to all sitting legislators, so both in the Senate and the House, and then all candidates for House this year as well. And then we're going to make it known to our voters, your legislator did not take any action. They could have, but they didn't take any action this year to make voters safe. Like, there were very, simple and common sense things they could have done. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but there's a lot of stuff that they can do to help clerks process absentee ballots early. They need a change in the law though. And so far our legislature is just not acting. And so we're going to do a lot of in-district work actually to encourage voters to contact their legislators, informing them how their legislator is or is not really acting in benefit of the voters. And then, if it doesn't happen in 2020, we want to set the stage so that people really can hold their legislators accountable, so that we can get a legislature in 2022 that will, take the steps that, you were talking about, where we just make it continually, secure and safe, but as convenient and, as possible to give voters the options to exercise our franchise, right? Our right to vote. So that is kind of it is a long-term campaign that we see that really mobilizes the same grassroots network of volunteers that we use to help pass Prop 2.
Yeah, if you would go down the same route and collect signatures and try to get on the ballot, how would that process look like this time? Would it require then an amendment to the state constitution and then therefore really follow the same path as voters, not politicians? I mean, I understand roughly in Michigan, if it requires an amendment to the state constitution, there is a higher threshold of signatures you need to collect and
Yeah.
so on. So how would this look like a little bit maybe in the technical terms, or is this too
Yeah.
far down the road?
Well, we're actually looking at vote by mail more as like any other kind of like legislative push, and as opposed to a ballot initiative. We're not looking at it right now as either a legislative or a constitutional ballot initiative. We're looking at it as like grassroots advocacy and legislative accountability. So educating people on how their legislator is voting or acting or not acting on their behalf, and then advocating for them to make their voices heard at the ballot box.
Yeah, they're really holding the legislators accountable.
That's right.
Yeah, what they're elected to do.
That's right.
Do you know about maybe any examples at the local level or in Michigan, if any state clerk or local clerks have already taken this up, or anywhere else in the U.S.? I think California, I believe I read, was the first state already to offer this. So
Yeah.
it's possible, right? It's not that
Oh,
I mean, a
absolutely.
state as big as California can do it and is willing to do it. Do you know a little bit about how it's working in other states or local?
Yeah. Well, some of the experts we had on our panel last night were just talking about this. So one of our panelists was Emma McReynolds, and she was the elections director in Denver, and she overhauled her system. She was serving that position for like 9 years, I think, and over that time, she overhauled the system to entirely vote by mail. And there's lots of other states that have vote by mail, like true vote by mail systems where the vast majority of people, vote by absentee ballot. You do need, in-person options before, like we talked about before. But what their data shows is that it's efficient. It's a lot easier to administer. It's cheaper in the long run, and that people really value the convenience. Right? They're able to, vote at home where they can sit down with the materials that they need to make an informed decision. And it's just like it serves the voter much better than sort of our antiquated system right now. And that was what our guest was trying to emphasize, is like all the work we're doing is just trying to it's coming at it from the voter side, right? It's serving the voters and like seeing, okay, what are our needs, like what do we want in our voting experience, and it's like getting the people that we elect to serve us, to like create those changes for us, so that we can vote and vote in the way that we choose. Yeah, so there's lots of states that have this in effect already, and they have even before COVID. And then there's other states that, like California and like New Jersey, that have just changed their law so that they send, mailed ballots to every voter because of COVID, because they want to do what we're trying to do, which is to keep people away from the polls, but at the same time being able to exercise their right to vote.
Yeah, it's too bad it took a crisis for us to
I
even
know.
really talking
Yeah.
about these issues and to make democracy as accessible and as easy to
Yeah.
participate in as possible. That's all the questions I have. You explain everything really clearly, and it's very exciting what's going on in Michigan. Also for me as an expat now in Germany, and to follow this and all the success that your campaigns have really been doing until now. So we're following from here in Germany. We're crossing our fingers for you, and we're very excited to see how this will all turn out. And yeah, we wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you so much.